The Arif case, the kite boy. On the sultry morning of June 27, 1997, the sun rose timidly over the narrow alleys of the Kampung Merah neighborhood, a poor, forgotten community on the outskirts of the Asian city of Kota Surya. There, among wooden shacks and muddy alleys, life moved at a slow pace, marked by the strong smell of the polluted canal, the honking of makeshift tricycles, and the laughter of children who still found space to play. But that day, the laughter would give way to silence. The body of a boy of just 13 would be found on the banks of the canal, wrapped in a black plastic bag. His name, Arif Rahman. Arif was known to everyone in the neighborhood. A thin, bright-eyed boy who always carried a wide smile and a worn-out leather ball. The son of Rahim Malik, an office assistant at a small transportation company, and Siti Noura, a housewife who sold cakes at the local market, he grew up amid the constraints of a family that, despite their poverty, harbored big dreams for their son. Arif loved soccer. He played barefoot on the neighborhood dirt field with his friends and said he would one day become a professional player. His greatest pride was the worn Surya United jersey, a gift from a neighbor. He was a simple boy, but full of plans, the kind that lit up the space around him. On the afternoon of June 26th, the day before the tragedy, Arif was playing in the street, flying a kite. The colorful kite cut through the cloudy sky, reflecting the little joy that still lingered within. At one point, the wind blew hard. The string snapped, and the kite fell into the junkyard that dominated the corner. The junkyard was the domain of a man everyone feared, Rizwan Rafi Hamid. Rafi was a whispered name in Kampung Merah. A burly, 37-year-old man with a hard gaze, always accompanied by two thin, barking dogs. He controlled the scrapyard and much of the neighborhood through fear. He wasn't just violent, he was unpredictable. In 1986, 11 years earlier, he had killed Hadi Yusuf, a childhood friend, after a trivial argument in front of a bakery. The shooting took place in front of several people, but no one testified against him. The body was buried without justice, and the community learned the price of silence. Rafi remained at large, more arrogant than ever, and his name became synonymous with danger. That late afternoon, when Arif's kite crashed into his scrapyard, fate arranged a fateful encounter. The boy went inside to retrieve the toy. Witnesses later reported hearing screams coming from inside the warehouse, screams of pain and despair. Two women passing by stopped in front of the iron gate, heard the muffled sounds, and then walked on in silence. Fear overcame any impulse to help. One of them, years later, would quietly confess, "At the time I thought it was a dog being beaten. When I realized it was a child, it was too late. I simply couldn't move." Inside the junkyard, the scene was brutal. Rafi beat the boy with punches and kicks in an irrational fit of rage, perhaps out of trespassing, perhaps out of sick pleasure. No one would ever know the real reason. Then he wrapped the small body in a black plastic bag, tied it with duct tape, and placed it in the back of an old pickup truck. A few hours later, the bundle would be thrown into the dirty waters of the canal that ran through the neighborhood. The next morning, local fishermen smelled it first. The bag was floating attached to the banks. When they dragged it out, they discovered the boy's body. The news spread quickly, paralyzing the neighborhood. People wept silently, but avoided speaking Rafi's name. Everyone knew. No one had the courage to say it. For his parents, the pain was indescribable. Rahim remembers the moment he identified his son. "I saw his legs. I recognized him before I saw his face. It was my boy. I couldn't believe it. His mother, Siti, never got over it. He came into the house hours before, smiling, saying he'd be back soon. I still see him walking past the door, but he never comes back. The police arrived quickly, but the investigation seemed doomed. There were no witnesses willing to testify. There were no cameras, no records. Rafi's junkyard was locked. As so many times before, the case seemed lost in the abyss of impunity. But something changed. A woman known in the neighborhood for her quiet courage, Donna Hasna, decided to break her pact of silence. She went to the police station and reported that 2 women had heard the screams. With patience and persistence, she convinced her neighbors to testify. It was risky, but they couldn't bear to live with the guilt any longer. The accounts coincided. Arif had entered the scrapyard, was seen screaming, and then silence. One of them also confirmed having seen Rafi carrying a heavy package to the truck that same afternoon. The police then obtained a warrant and raided the scrapyard. There, they found bloodstains on the ground, and among the rubble, a spool of kite string, recognized by the family as belonging to the boy. The pieces fit together. From then on, the pressure grew. Rafi, accustomed to impunity, began to hide. He avoided leaving his home, only went out at night, and eventually disappeared for weeks. He was found months later in a distant village, living off favors and surrounded by suspicion. Arrested preemptively, he maintained the same cold gaze that had always characterized him. He didn't confess. He showed no remorse. For him, the neighborhood was territory, and Arif was merely a consequence. The arrest brought some relief, but it didn't erase the trauma. Arif's case left a deep scar in Kampung Merah. The fear that had once silenced them now turned to resentment. Many families wondered, what if they had reported the first crime? What if they had confronted Rafi in 1986? Perhaps Arif would still be alive. Silence had protected the criminal for years, and silence had cost a child's life. Siti, the mother, never managed to return to her routine. She kept Arif's room intact, with the leather ball on the bed and the Surya United jersey hanging on the wall. She would enter the room at night and remain there for hours, silent, as if her son could return at any moment. Rahim, the father, immersed himself in work to cope with the pain. Both carried the feeling that they had lost not only their son, but also their faith in justice. The community, little by little, also changed. After the case, groups of residents emerged, determined not to repeat the silence. Young people began organizing social projects, trying to occupy the spaces that had previously been dominated by fear. But the scars remained. The canal where Arif was found is still avoided by children, as if weighed down by a curse. The case was news for months in Kota Surya. Newspapers printed the blurry photo of the junkyard and the canal. Headlines spoke of the silence that kills. Radio programs discussed the collective cowardice of a community dominated by fear. But beyond the repercussions, Arif's story became a symbol of something greater, the need to break the cycle of silence and violence that repeats itself in poor and forgotten neighborhoods. Arif Rahman was only 13 years old. He dreamed of soccer, he dreamed of a better future, he dreamed of a life different from the one poverty imposed on him. These dreams were cruelly interrupted in a matter of minutes inside a dark junkyard. And more than Rafi's brutality, his death happened because the entire neighborhood had learned years before to remain silent in the face of fear. Today, decades later, Arif's memory still resonates. His name is repeated on school murals, in sports projects, in small tributes made by those who didn't want to forget. But the family's pain never ceased. City sums it up in simple words. Losing a child is like losing air. You breathe, but never truly. A part of you died with him. In the end, Arif Rahman's case is not just the story of a crime. It is the story of a community that learned too late that silence protects criminals and condemns the innocent. It is a painful reminder that inaction also kills.